What's up? It's your boy KC. How y'all doing? And welcome to KC Reviews Episode 2. This is where I take an interview or a documentary from any sports athlete of my choosing and I review it for you guys. Today I'm going to review the 2003 Shoot interview from my favorite wrestler of all time, Macho Man Randy Savage. I have a ton of notes here, a lot of things that he said in this interview. When I listened to this interview, Macho Man did not sound bitter at all about anything except one person, and you guys know who I'm talking about, but I'm going to get into that, so I hope you guys enjoy. Here we go. He talked about how he got his Macho Man nickname, and believe it or not, it's not from professional wrestling. He got it from his days as a professional baseball player when he got into a fight with one of his teammates, and he kept bragging about it over the next 2 months. So everybody kept calling him the Macho Man. Who you think you are, the Macho Man now? And it just stuck. He talked about his father, Angelo Poffo, who got him into wrestling and trained him how to be a wrestler. And not only did he do that, his father owned a wrestling promotion, International Championship Wrestling, ICW, and that's where Randy got his first big break. And he calls his father his hero. And I remember Randy said that he did not want to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame without his father. That's how much respect he had for his dad, because he said that he wouldn't be a wrestler if it wasn't for Angelo. He also met Miss Elizabeth in ICW. People don't realize that they got married long before SummerSlam 1992. That was an angle. He actually married her December 30th, 1984. And in this interview, when he was asked about her, all he said was, "She was my ex-wife, it didn't work out, and I wish her the best." He doesn't really talk about his time in Memphis, but he did have some good matches against guys like Austin Idol, and he also had a feud going on with Jerry Lawler, who was the AWA Southern Heavyweight Champion, and he lost a loser leaves town match, which resulted in him leaving the company and going to WWE. All he had to say about Memphis at that time was he said he wanted to leave to see if he could make it in a place like WWF. He didn't want to be a big fish in a little pond. He wanted to be a big fish in a big pond with other big fish. So Vince McMahon gave him his break. And on a side note, that's why Jerry Lawler was hated so much when he first went into the WWF, because he had this thing where he would have guys pass through Memphis and he would beat these guys like Hogan and Savage and Kurt Hennig, and he would show people those videos when these guys are coming up and these guys are already established stars. He made them look like a bunch of jobbers, and a lot of the wrestlers didn't like him back then for that. He briefly talked about his first and only Intercontinental Championship run. That was back when the IC title actually meant something. It wasn't just a belt that a bunch of jobbers carry around. That was the workhorse title. Guys who carried that belt were prepped to be the top guy, and which it worked for Savage and it worked for guys like Bret. He defeated Tito Santana for the Intercontinental Championship February 24th, 1986. He talked about that being the most fun he ever had as a wrestler up to that point. He also talked about the rush that he had going into the Pontiac Silverdome against the legendary Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And they had, in my opinion, the best WrestleMania match in WrestleMania history, if not one of the best matches of all time. Because these guys went out there and they were the best on that show. The Hogan-Andre match was the spectacle and it drew in the most fans. But you want to talk about pure wrestling? It was Savage Steamboat WrestleMania 3. And I don't think Ricky gets as much credit as he should. He's one of the best damn wrestlers I've ever seen. This guy is amazing. In some ways, he's underrated. And I just want to throw that out there. He talked about having 100% input on all the costumes that he used to wear. He said that he owned all of those costumes, and he knew that it looked ridiculous, but he knew that the fans would like it, and he made it work. Randy said that even though he was always a positive man, he didn't expect to get the type of push that he got. He said it exceeded his expectations, and that he had no clue that they was going to put the title on him at WrestleMania 4. When he was asked about that tournament, he said that that tournament was designed because Hulk Hogan did not want to drop the belt to anybody. So they had the belt become vacant, and Randy won the title at WrestleMania 4. And for those of you who don't know, that spot was supposed to be for the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. He was supposed to win the title that night, but the plans changed because it goes back to Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. After he beat Savage at WrestleMania 3, he held the belt, I think, for about 2 months, and he decided to take time off because his newborn son was born, and he wanted to spend time with his wife and his son. So Vince McMahon had him lose the belt to Honky Tonk Man. Honky Tonk Man was supposed to drop the IC title to Macho Man, giving him his second run, but Honky Tonk Man did not want to drop the title. He refused. So instead, to make it up to Savage, they gave him the WWF Championship. And when you think about that, it kind of sucks for Ted DiBiase because he lost out on being the World Heavyweight Champion. But in the long run, I think that Randy being on top was best for business. When asked about being a babyface, he said that he was never a good babyface. He said he didn't understand why the fans got into him the way that they did. He did the same thing as a heel that he did as a face. So basically, it's kind of like The Rock. When The Rock went heel and he started all the catchphrases, the fans got into him and they turned him face. The Rock never officially turned into a babyface. The fans turned him. So that's pretty much what happened to Savage then. They just loved his wrestling ability and all his catchphrases and all his promos and everything, and they turned him face. One thing that surprises me is that he never mentioned the Mega Powers. The Mega Powers was one of the most successful angles in wrestling history, him teaming with Hulk Hogan. And rumor has it that the genesis of that storyline came from Miss Elizabeth, and if it did, she was truly a smart woman. He also talked about losing the title to Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 5. When they asked him about it, he said, "If it's for business, it's cool. It's something that needed to be done. You can't let personal feelings get in the way." True class. He talked about the Macho King gimmick. He said that Vince McMahon absolutely had to talk him into that one because he did not think that that gimmick was going to work, and he didn't want to give up the moniker Macho Man because he worked so hard to get it. And he said in the end Vince was right because he made it work. When he was asked about Dusty Rhodes, they asked him, did Dusty get a fair shake in WWE? And Macho Man said, "I don't think he got a fair shake at all. He did the best with what he was given, but he could have gotten so much more. Dusty was a legend, the American dream. They didn't need to reinvent him by putting polka dots on him. That was a rib on him by one of the guys in booking." And I agree with everything that Randy said. Dusty was a well-established name way before he came to WWF. And that was just Vince McMahon just trying to mess with the man's image. Because at that time, before he came over to WWF, he was booking for the competition in the NWA, WCW. So Vince McMahon tried to make a fool out of him. And that just goes to show how good Dusty was, because he took something as ridiculous as polka dots and he made it work, and he got over with the fans and became one of the most popular guys on that roster. So it blew up in Vince's face. This is probably one of the funniest parts of this interview. When they asked him what it was like working with the Ultimate Warrior, he said, "Me and Warrior always got along. He is crazy, but so am I. Sometimes when I was talking to him, I found myself actually understanding what he was talking about, which was nonsense." And I completely agree, because even being a grown man now, I go back and I listen to some of the Warriors promos and I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. And even when I do understand the words that he's saying, it doesn't make any sense. How the hell do you load a rocket with words? Don't you need fuel for that? He talked about laying on the lawn and being ran over by lawnmowers and raging elephants and stuff. This guy was batshit insane. And I wish we had more guys like that out there, because wrestling would be so much more entertaining if we had more people like the Warrior, his character at least. He was asked about Jake the Snake Roberts. He said that Jake was a great student of the business, he had a great head on his shoulders, and his ring psychology really surprised me. And that is true, because Jake wasn't the best wrestler by any means. He was a good wrestler, but it was the way he portrayed his character, the ring psychology that he had. That's what got his character over. He also shared a funny story about Jake's King Cobra. Not that one, I'm talking about the actual snake. He said that when the snake bit him, he said, "Oh God, did that hurt." And that was the reason why his arm swelled up 4 days later. So he had to go to the hospital. And he found out that 10 days later the snake died. And he said, "Well, I guess I gave the snake venom and that's why it died." And he talked about Jake being mad, coming up to him saying, "You killed my snake, you killed my snake." And I just lost it there when he told that story. He talked about working with Ric Flair. He said that Ric Flair was the hardest worker in the business. The only problem that I had is that Rick didn't want to adjust to other wrestling styles. He only wanted to wrestle a Ric Flair style match. And he said he used to joke with him about that. He said that he could wrestle Flair 50 different times and it would still have the same match. So that's what he had to say about Rick. He became an announcer by choice. He decided to step out of the ring because he said that Pat Patterson was always in Vince McMahon's ear, saying that he needed to get rid of the old guys and bring up the new generation, which was Bret, Shawn, Razor, which is cool. He said my deal was I still felt that I could wrestle. I had a lot of years left in me and I didn't want to be trashed for no reason. So that was the main reason why he ended up going to WCW. When he got to WCW, he said it was the strangest company he ever saw. When he got there, Hogan had people jumping through hoops that weren't there. It was crazy. People were tripping over themselves to serve Hogan and they didn't care how business was going. When he was asked about the NWO, he said it was huge. There was no reason for it to end the way that it did. It happened that way because of the jealousy in the back between the boys, and with Hogan being in charge of everything, that's why it failed. Politics was always a standard in WCW. Hogan was always one-dimensional. It didn't matter how much money I was getting paid. It was about the passion of the business. And when you have a guy who always ruins it, a guy who was a lead dog, it ruins it for everybody in the wrestling company. And that's why I have so much respect for The Rock, because The Rock was also a lead dog and never caused any trouble. He shook everybody's hand in the locker room and looked everybody in the eye and never stabbed anyone in the back, unlike Hogan. When asked about Eric Bischoff, he said, "I always liked Eric. He was good to me. But he always did his best to cater to Hogan's wishes. He got caught in a web of deceit and lies that Hogan created." He talked about working with DDP. He said that I have good memories. He worked hard and got over. If I had anything to do with his success, I was glad to do it. He also talked about the 3 surgeries that he had in the same knee and how he was never 100% after those surgeries. He said it really slowed him down. He could barely play baseball and it slowed him down in wrestling. He said, "I always thought I was bulletproof. I would get injured and I would keep going." And that was the mentality of professional wrestlers back then, for fear of losing money or their spot in the company. Most wrestlers would get concussed, they would get broken bones, torn muscles, and they would work through the pain. Because promoters were very cutthroat back then. If you didn't generate money or they didn't have no use for you, you would get cut. It didn't work like it does today, where you have a history of concussions and they force you to retire. You get hurt and you go out there and you make me some money. That was the mentality of promoters back then. He showed up on an episode of WCW Thunder to save the Millionaires Club. He said that that was a one-shot deal in a favor to Eric Bischoff. When he was asked about the demise of WCW, he said if anyone didn't see that coming, they were blind. It doesn't matter how much money you have back in the business. When you throw away money frivolously and you don't listen to the people who invest in the company and buy tickets. Do you hear me, Vince McMahon? Do you hear me over there at WWE? He said those are the people you get the opinions from. And he went on to say, not a self-centered person like Hogan. They knew they were heading down the wrong direction. And he said he, Hogan, is laughing at the demise of WCW when in actual reality, he should be ashamed, because a lot of guys lost their jobs and could not feed their families. And that could not be any more true. I agree with everything that he said, because Vince McMahon needs to go back and listen to this interview and listen to what Randy said, because he does not listen to the fans. That's another topic for another day. He talked about something I didn't know. He said that back in 2002 he issued a challenge to Hogan with all the money going to charity, but Hogan never responded. He refused the challenge, so Macho Man took $10,000 of his own money and he donated it to charity anyways. He talked about a website that he had back then, machoman.com, which he basically said he wanted to bring wrestling to the internet and he wanted to give back to the wrestling community. He used it as shows to bring talent from all around the world who never got a fair chance in WWE or any other big promotions then, and he wanted to bring them in and let them show off their talent and bring wrestling to the fans that they'd never seen before. And I thought that that was really cool. The page is still up there, but somebody took over the license, and instead of it being the machoman.com that he described, it sells his memorabilia. It sells all the Macho King clothes and toys and stuff like that, and the Macho Man stuff, because Randy's no longer with us. So I find that cool also. When he was asked about Curt Hennig, he said that Curt Hennig was one of his very best friends and that he would use money from his website to send to Curt Hennig's wife and his 4 kids to take care of all of them and his estate. Now that's a true friend. I really enjoyed listening to this interview. I didn't get the sense at all during this thing that Randy was bullshitting about anything. I felt that he was being straight up on everything that he said. He wasn't bitter towards Elizabeth or anybody else. He told it like it was. He really doesn't like Hogan like a lot of other guys in the wrestling business. That's nothing new there. So it definitely gets the 2 thumbs up. I recommend it to any wrestling fan out there. You can check out the rest of my content on my channel, KC The Most, where I have my weekly podcast where I talk about current wrestling, video games, and anime. I have topic videos about real world problems. I have Let's Plays. There's something for everybody up there. So like, comment, and subscribe. You can also check out my Facebook page by the same name, KC The Most. Check it out. Give me a couple of likes. I also have a Twitter handle, @MostKC. You guys can ask me questions or comment or let me know what you guys think of my videos there. That's all I got to say. That's it for KC Reviews episode 2. I'll check you out later. Peace.